Look at that. We're smoking it out. Hey everyone, Digital David here. Today in this video, I'm going to be checking out the ZOTAC MEK AI Enhanced Gaming PC. Special thanks to ZOTAC for sponsoring today's video and sending us this computer to check out. So first things first, if you're interested in this computer or you want to find out more about it, the link to it will be in the video description. Here's a look at the retail box and packaging. It's going to be using the Atlas M1 mid-tower case with beautiful panoramic design. Also want to walk you through some quick specs for this particular build. RTX 5070, AMD 7600X, 32 gigabytes of DDR5, 2 terabyte NVMe drive, and an 850 watt power supply. Now let's go ahead, let's open this up and see what's inside. Here are all the contents. First up, we have our product literature, followed by power cord and cable with your typical US plug end, 2 Wi-Fi antennas, GPU support bracket. We have our GPU power cable adapter right there. And we have 2 SATA cables in here. One's going to be your flat to flat. One's going to be your flat to 90 degree. And then last but not least, the computer itself. Let's take a look at this in more detail. Starting with the top, we have a magnetic removable mesh cover. You can see the inside there with our radiator already mounted and installed. That just snaps right back on and slides right in place. Looking at the front panel, we have tempered glass for about 90% of the front, and then down at the bottom we have some mesh venting right here. Take a look at the feet as well to get a feel for that gap if you're going to set this on carpet. Speaking of gap, here's a look at the bottom side with the 4 feet. And we have our power supply fan under this mesh screen right here, which is also removable. Here's a look at the back side. This is the top of the case. This is the bottom. We have our motherboard and all of our I/O right here. HDMI, BIOS button, USB-C, plenty of USB-A ports. We have our Ethernet port, Wi-Fi, and multiple audio options there. Then we have our GPU, our 5070 connection options. So 3 display ports, 1 HDMI. And then down at the bottom, we have our power supply here with our toggle on and off switch. Looking at the very front at the top here, we have our tempered glass that's removable just by pulling it out towards you. Down at the bottom, we have some venting for our power supply. We have a display screen for temps like CPU, GPU, and ambient temp. We have multiple control buttons here, as well as our mic and headphone combo jack, USB 3.0 Type A and USB Type C down at the bottom. Here's a look with the side panel removed. We have our ZOTAC Gaming 5070 GPU. We have 6 RGB fans in here. Love to see the full spread here with ample cooling for our CPU. We have our DDR5 RAM, display screen on the CPU cooler as well. Very clean cable management. They did a really nice job. Everything is prim, proper, and in place. For those wondering, take a look at our BIOS battery right there. Everything looks really nice, really clean. Let's see if that continues to the back side when we remove this panel. But looking at the back panel, very simple, straightforward with venting along the side for our fans in the case, which is great to see because again, on the front, we have just a little bit of venting down at the bottom, but most of that is going to be solid tempered glass. To remove the panel, just twist off these 2 screws and pull the cover out. And everything continues to the back side, nice and clean as well, properly cable managed. Everything's organized. This looks really, really nice. They did a good job there. You can take a look at our 80 plus gold certified 850 watt power supply. Everything's prim and proper and in place. We also have room for extra hard drives if you want to add some more storage. You can do that and achieve that on the back of the case right there if you want to pop in 2 2.5-inch SSDs. You even have a hard drive bay at the bottom here. If you wanted to add a 3.5-inch drive, you could do that there. Everything you need, bracket-wise, is already installed. And yes, looking down in here, obviously we have a SATA port right there if you want a power drive. I'm seeing the rest of our extra cables that are not in use for this. They're zip tied and then they're just tucked away in there. So you could get access to those if you want to add any legacy devices I'm seeing, PCIe or SATA, they're all tucked away down in there. And here's a look at our first boot. Just powered it up. Everything came online right away. Look at how good everything looks. We have our display down at the bottom, currently showing our ambient temperature, but we can swap that, right? We can cycle that through CPU, GPU, and there's the ambient. And then our little reset switch is currently changing the RGB settings there. So you can pick and choose which preset you like. But very easy one-touch controls. ZOTAC gaming light illuminated on the GPU. Looks beautiful. DDR5 RAM RGBs up and at it. Everything looks great. Really quickly, with the lights off, I wanted to cycle through some of the different effects here so you can get a better feel for the options that you have. They're very cool. Hopefully you can find one that matches your style and aesthetic with your setup. But with those 6 fans, they really cast a nice, beautiful glow. And it looks really sleek with this panoramic case. But very easy, seamless control right here. You can just cycle through. They're rich, vibrant colors. Again, very bright. Tons of options. I think we're just now getting close to going through them all. So look at that. Pretty amazing. So one-touch controls right there to configure your RGB. All right, we booted up our PC for the first time. We had to set up Windows 11, so you have to go through all those initial steps. It'll update as well. Then you'll be at the main desktop. First thing I want to show you is just a couple of key features, like the included 2 terabyte drive. We have 1.79 terabytes of usable space. Also, we have some of our specs right here, so you can see our storage, our GPU, our installed RAM. Don't forget it's DDR5. We have 32 gigabytes. But 2 slots are being used, and there's 2 extra slots. If you want to double or add some more RAM, you can do that. We have the AMD Ryzen 5 7600X CPU. And diving into the details a little bit further, looking at Task Manager here for the memory, 6400 mega transfers per second, so really fast DDR5. It's great to see that they haven't compromised on that, and also that it's already been enabled for us upon first boot. I haven't had to do anything or tweak the BIOS to get those speeds. Now, for those wondering about bloatware, the good news here is there really isn't any bloatware on this machine, which is great right out of the box. You have your full Windows 11 install, so you get the typical Windows 11 programs. So that's what you're going to see here. And you'll notice just a couple other pieces of added software. We have one from AMD, from NVIDIA, but this makes sense for our CPU, our GPU. We have one from ASRock for the motherboard. And then we have Zeuscast and ZOTAC Firestorm down at the bottom, but everything has its place and serves its purpose, which is great to see. And let's spend a minute looking at that software. We're going to start with Zeuscast. So Zeuscast is going to be how we can configure the 2 displays for our temperature setting. So here's a look at the home. So from here, we can also go to Atlas Digital. So we can adjust the properties. That's going to be for our display down here at the bottom. So pick and choose what you want. And then your temperature alarm, if you want to set that, you can configure that right there. And then same thing for the CPU cooler. We can pick and choose, do you want to display CPU temp or fan speed display, and do you want to set an alarm? And then you can go to settings here and you can choose, do you want it in Fahrenheit or Celsius? All of that can be set up right there within Zeuscast, which is cool. So if you want to configure that, set that up, you have a couple options for customization. Next up is ASRock's Polychrome Sync. That's how you can adjust and tweak the RGB light. But again, this is set up already to configure it very simply with the little reset switch here to pick and choose what you want. But if you wanted to dial that in further, you have that option right here with PolySync to make sure everything's where you want it to be. So you can control your onboard LED or your components right there within this software. And last but definitely not least, we have ZOTAC's Firestorm software for your GPU. So take a look, we're on the main screen for performance. We have our clock, voltage, and limit settings here. Really helpful real-time graphics changing up at the top for you too for some key specs. We have our different profiles to save or load. We have our OC scanner. We can cycle through these at the bottom. So we have our status for our GPU here. You can see the temp, the fan speeds. Here's our fan settings. Back to performance, spectra. So if you want to adjust that, you can tweak that for those wondering about customizing the GPU color. And then lastly, we have our general settings here too to pick and choose how you want to configure the software itself. But GPU, RGB settings, adjust that as you see fit. Performance settings, fan speed, and then overall performance status as well too. Just checking in on everything right here, and multiple profiles on the left side of the software so you can get this dialed in exactly how you want when you want. Now let's take a quick click through of CPU-Z just so we can learn more about a couple of the key components. So we'll start with the CPU. Again, it's the AMD Ryzen 5 7600X. Feel free to pause the screen and look at the breakout here of what we're experiencing with our build. Same for the motherboard. This is super helpful to easily identify what board they're using. They're using the ASRock B650M-C motherboard for those that want to do some more research to make sure it has the specs for you. And then let's take a look at the memory. There's our memory tab right there. We can click on SPD as well. And then lastly, we'll click on the graphics, but our NVIDIA. This is the GeForce RTX 5070 GPU powering this build. Looking at performance, let's start with the included 2TB NVMe SSD. So looking up this drive online is from AGI. This drive has an advertised 5200 megabytes per second read speed and 4700 megabytes per second write speeds. What results did we actually get? Well, using Crystal Disk Mark, we actually overachieved for both of those scores. So for read, we got 5200 and basically 60 megabytes per second. And for write, we got 4708 megabytes per second. So we overachieved in Crystal Disk Mark. We were brought back down more to reality using ASSSD, but that's always the case between these two programs when we're testing them. Still respectable 4500, 4600 megabytes per second read and 4200 megabytes per second write. So this is a Gen 4 drive. Now there's no heatsink with this drive included, and there's no heatsink on the motherboard itself. From our research, I believe that this motherboard actually supports Gen 5 drive. So if you were going to get a Gen 5 drive to boost that performance even further, make sure you get a heat shield for your drive to keep those thermals under control so you can get even faster read and write speeds. Looking at our Cinebench R23 results, take a look at our multi-core score up here at the top, 14,313 points. Followed by our single core score of 1,949 points. Looking at that ranking for multi-core here, towards the middle of the pack for the CPUs that they provide. And we can look at the same thing for our single core score, which is going to give you a little hint at the strengths of this AMD 7600X CPU. Thanks to the resource from CPU Monkey, we can see better where this fits with desktop processors. So they bench the 7600X coming in about 15,000 points. We were at around 14,000 points, but it would be well within this range near like the 13400, the 10900, the 14400, obviously the 7600. So the 5750G, the 11700 from Intel. So quite a few CPUs in that range. If we look at the specific score that we got, which was 14,313, it would just beat out the 5700X and fall a little bit short of the 11700F, but above the 5700G and Intel's 10900X CPU. And similar story here with single core score. So we got a score of 1,949, so a little bit less than what they clocked for the 7600X, but that puts us right within range of the 2900 series, the 13600, the 9600X 3D. So if we look for our particular score down here at the bottom, it would be right in between the 12700K and the Ryzen 9 Pro 7945. So we'd be right here with a score of 1949, but again, beating out the 7700, some Threadrippers, right in line with that Intel 12700 series from Intel. If you're Team Blue, 13600, so right within that range is what you would expect for CPU performance, whether that's multi-core or single core with this AMD 7600X. Moving along to GeekBench 6, take a look at our single core score of 2954, followed by our multi-core score of 12999. We can quickly go through some of the data here. If you're interested, feel free to pause. We'll look at the single core performance. There's a nice breakdown of that. if you want to see those individual scores. And then here's the multi-core performance. Looking at CPU Monkey's data, we can see that they got a similar score to us. We actually beat them out by a couple hundred points, but right in line with the 13700 and 1200 series CPUs, 14500T, 5900 XT, 12900E, but you get the idea to see where it's going to stack up against the competition. There's the 12600K right below, but for multi-core score, you can expect something similar to this. And for single core score, we actually clocked well above what they have at 2846. We got 2954. This has it right in line with the 14700 series, above the 7900, right next to the Intel Core Ultra 5 225F variant, 13900K. So a lot of really solid CPUs right here that this is going to compete with on that single core speed level. And if we look at our score alone, which isn't always going to be apples to apples with whatever they were using to conduct these tests, but we would be right in line with the Intel Core Ultra 7 265T above the 235. There's the 14900, 13900KS, Core Ultra 5 245. So some really good CPUs in that 2900 range as well. And interesting that they got the exact same score we did, but for the Intel Core Ultra 7 265T. Before we get to gaming benchmarks, let's talk about temps and thermal management with this particular build. This will be good just to see with the parts and components in this case, how everything operates. So first up, looking at it at idle, we have all of our panels on. This is what we're seeing. Now keep in mind, this PC's been on for a couple hours today, so it's already pretty warmed up, even if it's just at idle, but our CPU is still in a respectable range at 39 degrees Celsius. Our GPU is coming in right at about 34 degrees Celsius for its temps at idle. You should see temps like that or even a little bit lower if your PC hasn't been as stressed and as used as ours has today here in the studio. But around there or lower is what you should see with this build. All right, so it's been almost 10 minutes and everything is held steady. So first looking at the CPU, it's peaked at 85 degrees Celsius and locked in there. If I'm remembering correctly, I believe the 7600X protects itself at 95 degrees Celsius. So that's a testament to our AIO, the fans and everything else, keeping it nice and cool, even though it's stressed out at 100% and pulling 114 watts. For the 5070, similar story here, 70 degrees Celsius, maxed out at 250 watts and 99% utilization, well within an acceptable range for having that under such a heavy load. So far, so good. Everything's performing really nicely thermally. All right, but I'm not going to stop there. We're going to crack out that FLIR camera. We're going to check our power cable here for the GPU. All right, not bad. Cool enough there, 105 degrees. And then take a look at that hotspot on the GPU. 145 degrees. Got some heat on the M.2 drive. Nice and toasty as well. 139, 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Take a look at the motherboard. Close to 120 there. CPU cooler here. Again, that's just the display at the top. 107, 108 degrees Fahrenheit. And then here's a look at the back side. The exhaust fan. GPU. And now the bottom inside the power supply. Around 100, 102 degrees Fahrenheit in there. But wait, there's more. Let's get the smoke machine out so you can get a feel for the airflow with this case and how it's going to move all the air around. So let's have a little fun here. We're going to inject it in a couple different spots and you'll see how it's able to flow all throughout the case and hopefully exit out the top and the back side. So we'll start at the very front right here. So look at that. If it's coming in from the bottom, that cool air, the GPU and those fans are lifting it up into the case. And that's coming exhausting out the top. Let's go to the side here. Look at that. We're smoking it out. So pretty sweet. Doesn't matter if that cool air is coming in from the side or the bottom. Everything's doing what it's supposed to. Cold air is coming in, being forced through the GPU to cool it. The warm air is coming out, being forced through the radiator to cool that, and then exhausting out the top here, as well as out the side. All right, gamers, now it's your time to shine to see how this does on some of your favorite titles. So with the benchmarks that we're going to take a look at here in just a second, we're actually going to be comparing it. You'll see the FPS values and all of that on screen for our 5070. We'll actually be comparing it to the ZOTAC Gaming 5090 variant of this build with an upgraded CPU as well. It's got the 9800X 3D CPU. So you can see what this computer gets you versus one that's spec'd out to the max if gaming is your top priority. With it all said and done, where does that leave us in regards to this ZOTAC Gaming pre-built PC? First thing I want to talk about is the build quality. Parts and components are top notch, they're off the shelf, easy to repair, swap, or upgrade. Cable management, everything about the build quality itself is right where it needs to be. Very professional, really well done. I like that we have room to add more RAM. It's using an AM5 CPU, so we can swap that out easily in the future. Plenty of support and life left for that as well. In regards to the GPU, no surprise if you get a 5090, it's going to perform better than a 5070. I'd argue that price and performance, the 5070 is a massive win in that regard, so it's putting more money back in your pocket if you want to do anything else to your PC, or maybe like your monitor desk. You get the idea. That's just more money to buy more games. So anyways, that's kind of where I am at with this particular model. I think it hits a sweet spot, giving you plenty of performance now that's going to be good enough, if not great, while giving you plenty of headroom in the future if you ever want to make any changes to this build down the road.